So true story, I was talking to somebody about Batman v Superman and they were like, oh wow, that came out this year. 2016 just, man, like March feels like it was 6 years ago. Such a long year and yet we're all surprised that now it's Christmas. Time, isn't that weird? This is a terrible cold open, let's get into the video. So here's a series that I haven't really gotten to in a while. Was meaning to make this like a main staple of the channel, and then, I don't know, it's kind of hard to do, kind of hard to make videos this complex. I'm not going to be making any more of those 44-minute long videos. I kind of went overboard with planning out how I'd want episode 8 to go, and then it took 3 weeks to edit, and then it turns out it's in the downstairs era, so the audio is awful. But oh well, on to other things. I think even the most hardcore DC fanboy would admit this year did not go exactly as planned as far as the cinematic universe would go. And before anyone gets all up in arms and how like I'm just echoing everyone else's opinion and how I just hate DC and I love Marvel and all that, I am far and away a DC guy. I grew up with the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, that was super cool. In Teen Titans, that was cool. Like, that whole lineup of cartoons is awesome. And then the Dark Knight trilogy, which that's one of the bigger things that got me into filmmaking. The Dark Knight trilogy and the Grey are just the two film entities that just got me saying, hey, this might be cool, let's start studying this. And surprisingly, with these two movies about to talk about, I had some fun with them in the theater. Like, there were some moments where I was like, oh, that's neat, I wish there was more of that. DC has great characters to work with, and they've got a ton of great stories. There's a lot of cool things in the play box, and yet we all want to just throw them at the sun and shoot blue lasers at them and just not tell interesting stories. And also, this has no place in the video, I just want to throw out there, I thought Man of Steel was pretty cool. Yeah, I feel like the thing with Pa Kent could have been handled better, and I feel like there's some aspects to Superman's character that didn't quite fit well. But what can I say? It's a cool movie, solid visuals, great soundtrack. I can't play it here because I'll get flagged, but Hans Zimmer's score, just beautiful. Magnificent. But that's neither here nor there, let's get back on topic. Seems like everyone and their mother has kind of picked apart what was wrong with all these movies, but no one's really talked about what would fix them. The thing is, like, Bandit Incorporated already made his what it should be video, so we're not gonna get a what it should have been thing. Belated Media has still only done the Star Wars prequel trilogy, which is a shame because I think he could also branch out and talk about other movies that need to be fixed. But anyway, here's your one-stop shop for what the DCU should have done and what they can learn moving forward. Suicide Squad, let's get this right out of the way. It's nice and simple. Here's how you fix Suicide Squad. You see the Joker? You see him over there? See how he's connected to everyone? And you got all these backstory clips, and he's super relevant to the story, and yet you gave him a very small role to play, which you make him the main villain. He's got an abusive relationship with Harley Quinn. He's got a history with the majority of our main characters. All of these are Batman villains, so they would know, or they would at least hear rumors of how crazy Joker is and how, oh man, did he really cut his own face off? Or whatever lore you want to go with on this. And it also creates something interesting because now Captain Boomerang, who had no discernible characteristics, is now the outsider, and he's kind of our new eyes into it, to where they have to explain the lore of the Joker to this new guy, and can fill all of us in on what this Joker is like versus Heath Ledger's Joker. And that actually gives a character to Captain Boomerang, because now he's an outsider. You'd be like, "Aye, what's this Joker bloke?" That was not at all Australian. What was that? Oh no, he's got the knife stuck in my Vegemite. I'm gonna stop trying because this is getting pathetic. The point is, he's a fresh set of eyes on the situation, and everyone has to explain the Joker to him. And the Joker affects all of these characters in different ways. Specifically with Harley Quinn, they've got that backstory. The Joker would no longer be portrayed as like this kind of like nosy boyfriend who like, hey, can I pick you up now? That story arc will get resolved, and we get an intriguing relationship between these two characters that we've never seen on screen before. Also, you get to take a page out of The Dark Knight and out of Skyfall and all these movies where the villain wins. Here's the thing about villains trying to destroy the world. It's not scary. It's a big spectacle to have your big blue sky laser shoot up and open up portals or plant a bomb or whatever it does. But at the end of the day, we subconsciously know the world isn't going to end, because then you stop making DC movies. So there's no tension that the villain might win. Because even though we buy into the story, oh yeah, no, we gotta stop this, in the back of your mind you're like, yeah, no, the villain's not gonna win. But in movies like The Dark Knight and Skyfall, both extremely critically acclaimed, really well received, the villain has slightly lower, more personal stakes. The Joker in The Dark Knight wants to corrupt Gotham. He wants to show Gotham how truly awful they are when they're placed in a bad situation. Javier Bardem's character in Skyfall wants to kill Bond's mentor. He wants to kill M. These are all easily attainable stakes that could actually happen. In the case of Skyfall, it does happen. In the case of Dark Knight, it's a little more gray. But the difference between the Joker and Enchantress is the Joker isn't out to destroy the world. He might be out to destroy your world, or he might be out to kill a bunch of people, but he's not out to, like, end civilization as we know it. So the Joker is already a more intriguing, a more suspenseful villain because he may actually succeed. And you know what? Here's a more interesting dynamic for Enchantress. You can establish throughout this movie that June Moon, who is the host of Enchantress, is having a harder time controlling the witch, and it becomes more dangerous with every time that they have to call her in. So eventually it gets to the point where she's basically the last resort. Calling Enchantress out every time is basically pushing the big red button. It's always a gamble. It always has to be in just a situation where nothing else can work. And at the end of the movie, you can hint that Enchantress is going to get out and she will be the big bad for the next movie. That's how you raise the stakes for the sequel. That's how you don't blow everything in the first movie by saying, oh man, the world's ending, and then it doesn't. Take your time, develop the characters, then show some spectacle. And really, aside from that, you've got all the ingredients to succeed. Margot Robbie killed it as Harley Quinn. Jared Leto, for what he was in, gave a pretty decent Joker. Will Smith is always awesome. Well, except for in After Earth. And Killer Croc, I don't get why. He's kind of supposed to be an outcast. I don't get what they did with his character, but I'm sure it could be fleshed out more if the Joker is the villain and we get to go into more Gotham type stuff. But again, all the ingredients to succeed are there, you just didn't put them in the right order. Joker should be the villain in this movie. Enchantress can be like a little tease for later on down the road. Now anyway, on to the real one that needs work here. Like the Suicide Squad, I liked a lot of the ingredients of Batman v Superman. I know a lot of people were saying, man, there's no way that this Lex Luthor could be any good. There's no way that this and this can end up working out. And yeah, it's gonna take a lot of tweaking and a lot of twisting the story around, but I think as far as the characters go, I mean, it's a lot of good stuff to work with. Ben Affleck's Batman, there's an interesting story arc there. With this version of Lex Luthor, you can tell an interesting villain story. But I think the biggest character early on that needs work is Superman. I think one of the big problems with this movie and with certain parts of Man of Steel is Zack Snyder wanted to make another Dr. Manhattan. The guy from Watchmen who is supposed to be like, oh man, if a big powerful alien did come to Earth, we'd all be terrified of him. And that's all good for Watchmen. That's good for that type of story. But Superman is a character that, like, we haven't had on screen in a long time. Heroic people go through life and they try to do the best they can, but at the end of the day, they're just human. That's the interesting thing about Superman is he's not human. He doesn't have these limitations from a physical perspective. And he's a guy with all the power in the world who just wants to do the right thing, but sometimes the right thing it's not what it seems. And sometimes the world pushes back, sometimes the world doesn't want to be saved. We've seen these conflicts done really well in films like The Incredibles, and with Captain America Civil War, and Captain America Winter Soldier. So I think first and foremost, we need to fix Superman's character. There's a moment like when Superman's kind of going off by himself, he's up by the Fortress of Solitude, and he gets that vision of his dad. I think whatever else you need to cut out, we need to make this scene just a couple seconds longer, just a minute tops longer. And his dad's telling him the story of how, oh man, we thought we saved these people, but we really redirected that flood and it hurt a bunch of other people. The moral of that story shouldn't be life sucks and then you die. Like, that's a very bleak direction to go with Superman's character. Mr. Kent should expand on this story and go further and explain why he wouldn't let Clark save him. Because he knew that one day he would be capable of doing all these great things, and of helping all these people. But could even Superman take on the burden of the entire world? Could his son really just be Atlas and just hold up the hopes of humanity? And he closes off the talk by saying, hey, you may not be human, but you sure aren't God. But it does raise the question, can a guy who can do anything physically handle the emotional and the psychological burden of taking care of the entire world? After all, at this point in time, he thinks it's just him. So that's a cool theme you can play with. And I know I just went on talking about how we should stick to the traditional Superman approach, but in this movie, we got a young Superman. I think he should talk back a bit. I think there's a lot of points in this movie where someone will say something directly to his face and like a cool one-liner, and he'll just sit there scowling and just... I don't like that. I'm not saying go full Marvel and have them like quip back and forth, but like have them talk back every once in a while. Like that scene on the roof, he doesn't know Lex has his mom, he just taking this whole philosophy thing straight to the face. Lex is all like, well, God can be all good or all powerful, but he cannot be both, or whatever that line was. And Superman can just come back with like, oh wow, Junior, I didn't think you were in a position to tell God what he could and couldn't do. Or when Batman talks about how Superman has killed people, like he can just point out the hypocrisy of it, like, yeah, you killed people too, though. Like, what's wrong with you? Just have a Superman who acts human. Superman can be sad, Superman can be angry, but if we only see him as sad and angry, then he becomes a boring character. We want to empathize with this character who believes he has the weight of the whole world on his shoulders, and sometimes in order to get that empathy, you gotta have him tell a joke. You gotta have him say something smart, something clever, do something that you would do in that situation. Again, not saying he needs to be quipping all over the place, but just, I don't know, get a little bit of verbal jousting going on. Now let's turn our attention to the other title character. I think Batman can kill people in this movie. I think I'm perfectly okay with that as long as the movie acknowledges that that is not within his character. I know some people are gonna say, well, I was already in the movie, but it wasn't really that clear. Even after the fight with Superman, Batman still kills a couple people, and we get one line at the funeral like, oh yeah, I failed him in life, I'm not gonna fail him in death, which might mean he's not gonna kill people. It could also mean a bunch of other things. Just want a clear line like, at this point in time, no, Superman has inspired me to become what I once was again. I was dark, I was jaded, I became a monster because I thought I had to slay a monster. Now I'm back. Now I'm the Batman that I once was. I am back. What a clear defining line. Also, I really like the idea of somewhere along the line, Superman is the one to bring him back out of the darkness. Not in that sense, but as in like bring him out of the murder spree. Because that goes a long way into developing their friendship and how they help each other out and they build off of each other. As much as I want to see Batman and Superman fight in this movie, I want to see Batman and Superman also become friends in this movie. Now let's get into the story a bit. Remember that Africa scene in the beginning? Yeah, that's gone. We're taking that out of the script. Hey, you see Doomsday? He's gone. We're taking that out of the script. Cross out Doomsday and put in Bizarro. There's a couple of things I think you can do with this. I still think the big bad that Lex Luthor has as his backup should be made from Zod. Thematically, that makes perfect sense. But also, I think it makes more sense for him to make an evil version of Superman out of this Kryptonian. It just makes sense, and then also early in the film when they're like, whoa, is Superman destroying random villages in Africa? It's because it's someone who looks exactly like Superman that Lex is just saying, hey, go, cause havoc, destroy stuff in third world nations, and then escape before anyone can report on it. Make Superman look super ultra guilty, and then that's how we kick off this plan. I think a huge benefit you get from making this Bizarro rather than Doomsday and having this thing and Superman look so similar is that later when you show Superman saving people, there might be some hesitation. Especially that thing in Mexico where he like flies away and then he goes and gets someone out of the burning building. What if everyone just screams and freaks out because they're like, oh shoot, Bizarro or whatever that thing was is back, and then he's calmly like floating out of the building with the girl in his arms and he kind of drops her down or kind of sets her down, and they realize, wait, this isn't the same guy that was like flying over and being super scary a couple days ago. It's a different guy. In the early portion of this movie, you don't outright show Bizarro doing this, and you don't outright state anything that's going on. It's gonna be revealed later in the movie. So initially, all the hesitation and screaming could just be played off as, oh yeah, they're terrified because they're still not used to the whole alien with superpowers thing yet. Also, another cool villain thing with Lex that I wanted to play around with is just make Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor friends initially? Like, in the main movie, Lex is already one of the, like, catalysts who's, like, leading Batman to go fight Superman, and it just doesn't make any sense for him and Bruce Wayne to not meet face to face when they're both going after Superman. They're both businessmen. He can drop hints that he knows, hey, I kind of have figured out you're Batman. No big deal, though. I know you're kind of not a big fan of this Superman guy. Well, we found something in the Indian Ocean. It's this big green rock. We've been experimenting with it. I think it might hurt him. You want to give this a shot? Just kind of egging him along to go and try and take out Superman. It just makes sense thematically, because then Lex Luthor has more strings to pull as he can play the innocent guy on both sides. He can say to Batman, wow, well, here's your chance to go avenge all those people who died. Here's your chance to do something with your legacy. Like, all the internal monologue that Bruce Wayne is having with Alfred can be Lex Luthor kind of egging him on. Like, hey, you're already kind of killing people. Let's take out an alien. Let's save the world here. Because what happens if he's suddenly not on our side? You've seen the reports of stuff around the world. How do we know that's not him? And then meanwhile, on the other side, Lex Luthor can play completely dumb to Superman, like, oh yeah, Batman's just insane. He's this crazy vigilante who's just gonna do all this crazy stuff in Gotham. He can pull strings at both sides and then simultaneously plot the death of whoever ends up winning between them. Bizarro is the contingency plan for if Superman kills Batman. Deathstroke, who we now know will be in the Batman movie, would be the contingency plan if Batman ended up winning and he needed an assassin to take him out. And speaking of Bruce Wayne, I like Bandit Incorporated's idea. He made it, again, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, he made a video on what Batman v Superman should be, like a year before it came out. One of his ideas was that Bruce Wayne buys the Daily Planet. I think that could lead to a lot of tension. I think it's a really cool idea. He had one scene in the main movie which was Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent kinda sorta knowing, having an idea of who the other person was, but they're not in costume, and he just kinda hints at, oh yeah, we're gonna butt heads later. I say have a bunch of those scenes. Have a bunch of scenes where there's some legitimate tension between these two ideologically different people. And in a movie called Batman v Superman, I think we need a little more fighting between Batman and Superman. I get it, it's more cerebral, it's more like conflict on a bigger scale, but at the same time, I think that first encounter should be a little bit longer. Batman is going after some thugs, and we essentially find out that Lex Luthor set this whole thing up. I mean, it's not outright said, and it's not figured out by any of the characters, but it's inferred, and it may be shown behind the scenes that, like, oh yeah, if you guys could go set this up, and then I'll create a situation where Superman thinks that Batman's gonna kill some people, get them to clash early on. And Batman doesn't have the kryptonite at this point, so we see all of his contingency plans, all of his, like, backups to, like, basically every plan that Batman has except for the red sun beams and the kryptonite. Basically everything except for what would be effective against Superman. And we get an elongated, cool fight with Batman throwing the kitchen sink at him and Superman just countering all of it. And then Superman has won this round and he just says, hey, look, you cut this out. I'm gonna take you in now. And then Batman, of course, is super slippery, so he's like, no, you're not. And then he gets away. He doesn't win the fight, but he does escape to fight another day. Notice there's someone I didn't really mention a lot yet. It's Wonder Woman. I like her in this movie. I think she should be in this movie. I think she should play a smaller role in this movie than she ended up playing. The thing about that really cool line in the trailer, like, is she with you? Oh, I thought she was with you. Is that the line and that moment, that really cool character moment, doesn't work if Batman has just been exchanging emails with her. I shouldn't have to say that. I think someone should have checked the script and told Zack Snyder that before they shot the movie, but I mean, oh well. So we see Diana Prince throughout the whole movie, and she's just kind of like Black Widow in the second Iron Man movie, not really sure what to think of her. So when she shows up later, it'll just be like, oh wow, that's crazy. That was you? Holy cow. Alright, let's get fighting. But anyway, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, it's time to get into the main event. The second fight with Batman v Superman, I think the motivations will be similar, but there's a very crucial difference. In the movie that we got, the whole thing is, oh yeah, I'm Lex Luthor, I'm the bad guy, and I've got your mom, and unless you bring me the head of Batman, I'm gonna kill your mom. There's a lot of things that don't make sense about that. First off, Lex is playing his hand pretty early. That doesn't seem like a very Lex Luthor thing to do, even for this Lex Luthor. Like, he can be eccentric and outlandish, but at the end of the day, that's just bad villainy right there. You don't play your hand that early. Also, what's stopping him from just, like, running around the city super fast and then finding his mom and getting her and avoiding the whole thing. So the crucial change here is we change it from I'm Lex Luthor and I have your mom, go kill the Batman, to I'm Lex Luthor, sorry for kind of pushing your girlfriend off the roof. That seems to be the only way to get your attention these days. I knew you were gonna catch her, so didn't think she was gonna die. I know, I'm kind of crazy like that. Anyway, I just got a tip that Batman has your mother, so go get him. Superman now has a stake in this fight. Obviously, Batman's in full hunter mode. He's got all his traps set up. He's all doing what he was going to do in the original movie. But instead of Superman being like, hey, hold up, I gotta stop you here, let's not fight, and then they fight anyway, Superman's coming in guns blazing, walks right into the trap, and it's similar to the first fight where it's just Batman just throwing the kitchen sink at him, and Superman, admittedly a little more like, he's hurt a little more this time around, just because Batman has upped his strategy since last time, but ultimately he's not really doing anything to Superman, and it becomes the reverse of that scene from The Dark Knight. Now Batman's in the hot seat, and Superman's the one asking, where is she? But as soon as Batman pulls out the kryptonite, that's when the fight flips around immediately, and we start to see the fights go the same way as it did in the theatrical release, in the actual movie that we got. That part of the fight was pretty cool. I just wish the first half of it wasn't 45 seconds long. And I know this is gonna make some people angry, not the DC fanboys, but like the people who hate this movie, but I actually kind of like the idea of the Martha thing. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't executed well in the movie. There's still a lot of tweaking that needs to be done for it. I think early in the movie you should have a scene where Superman is showing up back home at Kansas and he's calling for his mom, and then he has to go into town and like, hey, have you seen Martha anywhere around here? Or have that be the scene where he finds out that she's missing, and then that leads to Lex Luthor trying to push Lois Lane off the building and all that stuff. But for these characters that have been around for 75, 80 years, there's not many unique ways you can approach this relationship between Batman and Superman. So to point out that thing that not a lot of people have really pointed out, that their moms have the same name, and kind of use that as something to symbolically to get Batman to reflect on his life. I don't know, I think that could be interesting. I think it was done very poorly, but I think if it's a little more subtle, a little more like not trying to force the metaphor so hard, I think it could work. It just makes sense that because Batman is in hunter mode and he's dehumanizing Superman, just thinking like, this is not a human being, this is an alien, this is a dragon that I have to slay, and to kind of connect on the level like, oh yeah, this guy had a family, this guy has a mother who he's looking for, who's gone missing. But also the gut punch of, what have you done with Martha? What are you doing to Martha? Like, not like the casual like, you're letting them kill Martha, like directly going at Batman is going to affect him emotionally. He's gonna have to take a step back. I don't think the yelling like, what did you say that man? I think that's a very bad acting choice for an otherwise great performance by Ben Affleck. He needs to be a little more subdued. He needs to be a little more like internalized and affecting him. And so he just kind of goes off, he drops his weapon, kind of walks away, he just goes for a walk and just reflects on life. And this will be the definitive point. From this point forward, Batman does not kill anyone. Batman renews his one rule at this point. And we get a little bit of tension here because Batman doesn't have his mom and he doesn't know where she would be, and Superman at first doesn't believe him, but then he's reminded, hey, I have this kryptonite, I could have killed you if I wanted to. And Superman was so focused and honed in on, I'm going to kill this guy and get my mom back, that he didn't really use any of his senses. So Batman's like, hey, why don't you check around? Like, I don't know, can you hear anything? Like, you got pretty good hearing. And either through Batman's technology or through Superman's powers, they find out where Martha is. I think the same series of events follows out here. We get the warehouse scene and we get Superman going and confronting Lex Luthor. And in the warehouse scene, you can kind of show Batman struggling to be like, oh shoot, I'm not gonna kill people now. So like, that's that thug like drops the grenade and then he falls on it. You can have like a thing where like he reaches out like that grappling hook and grabs it and has to throw it at a wall. I don't know, just something like that to where he's like, oh shoot, yeah, now I can't kill people. Meanwhile, in Lex Luthor's lair, Superman confronts Lex and is like, hey, so Batman kind of found my mother, he didn't have her, why did you tell me that he kidnapped her, what's going on here? I think you might be the bad guy. Lex Luthor, I think you might be the bad guy. And then we get the big reveal for Lex's contingency plan if Superman survived the fight, which is Bizarro. Not Doomsday, Bizarro, like we established. And this fight should be kind of emotional because this is essentially Superman fighting Zod all over again. Except this time, he's got help. We're not gonna have the whole cop-out thing where they're like, oh yeah, there's barely anyone in the city tonight. It's mostly evacuated. We could probably drop a nuke a couple feet above the skyline. We're not doing that. it's a fully populated city. There's 2 of them, then 3 of them, because then Wonder Woman shows up and you get that cool "she with you? No, I thought she was with you" line. And she's helping out, and they're steering citizens out of the way, out of the path of destruction. Batman is trying to keep casualties down. You see him swinging around on the grappling hook, like picking people up, getting them out of the way of falling debris. And around the midpoint in this fight, Batman tries to help out Superman, and he hits Bizarro with one of those kryptonite grenades. But being Bizarro, kryptonite has the opposite effect on him, which makes him stronger. And the little bit that got on Superman kind of makes him weaker, so this shifts the fight in the opposite direction. Instead of giving Superman an edge, it kind of messes things up. And while Wonder Woman helps out and a slightly now injured Superman to fight off Zod and try to steer him away from the city, Batman narrowly tracks down Lex Luthor as he's trying to escape. Is like, no, what's going on here? Why was that thing not affected by kryptonite? And he beats the information out of him. Is like, okay, so it's the opposite effect. Alright, so kryptonite will make him stronger. What's gonna make him weaker? Well, whatever makes Superman stronger. Sunlight. So by the later points in the fight, more of Zod is starting to come out of Bizarro. We see that he is now intentionally steering the fight back into the city, trying intentionally to cause trouble with the civilians and trying to kill people. So Wonder Woman has to kind of break off fighting Bizarro directly to kind of, again, help out the civilians. Again, big focus on getting small, squishy, innocent people out of the way and trying to keep the casualty rates down. It'd be great if at the end of this fight, just to kind of steer around the whole Man of Steel thing, if there were no casualties in this thing. There are no civilian casualties. But again, this brings it back to 1v1 with a very tired, now poisoned Superman versus a rejuvenated, powered up Bizarro. But they've been fighting all night. Like the Batman v Superman, the second fight, like that was in the middle of the night into the AM. Now at this point, dawn is starting to break. And so you see little rays of sunlight start to peek through the clouds, and this is strengthening Superman and weakening Bizarro. So now Bizarro knows he doesn't have a lot of time before this fight completely flips around. So that little the Zod strategist in him is like, okay, I gotta start getting more intentional about trying to kill these civilians. And so most of this fight is Superman now trying to stop him from hurting innocent people. And as they're fighting and wrestling around, they crash down and they land into a subway, or something very similar to the setup for Man of Steel. And we get very similar, if not identical, scenario where Bizarro is gonna kill these people over here unless Superman kills him. And they're underground, so they're essentially matched again. Superman doesn't have the power of the sun, doesn't have that sweet Sunny D to help him out now. And he's screaming, he's saying, "No! Stop! Don't do it!" And he's thinking about, oh shoot, I may have to kill this guy again. Like, I thought I was never going to do this again. I never wanted to do this. But then suddenly there's a bright flash of light. It's the Batmobile with giant solar panels on it. Batman is unleashing the power of the sun into this subway, and Superman is fully charged up. Is it a little cheesy? Probably. But it does go along with sort of the theme of this whole fight, which is, hey, Superman can do so much more when he's got help. So with all this new strength and with Bizarro weakening from just the giant solar flare that's coming his way, Superman, instead of breaking Bizarro's neck, he just kind of applies a little more pressure with his forearm and he chokes him out. And so Bizarro passes out, not dead, vitals totally fine. We actually get a quick little thing like, check his vitals. Yeah, no, he's still alive. So aside from the massive amount of property damage, no civilian casualties, and the main villain did not die during this fight. How is that for a refresher from all this, all this death and destruction that we've seen in superhero movies over the years? And in the aftermath of the fight, Lex is still caught. We get a legitimate sense of betrayal from Bruce Wayne to Lex. Like, he genuinely trusted Lex Luthor, and he doesn't trust a lot of people. And so yeah, the whole idea of bringing Lex into a prison in Gotham so Batman can keep a close eye on him, that makes sense. I don't think it should be Arkham Asylum, though. I think very clearly that's crazy people jail. Lex is going to rich people jail. That's just the way it works. Also, in this version, we still have some of the dream sequences. They're not going to be as obnoxious and as long. They're going to be short. They're going to be flashes. If you want the thing with the flash, maybe we can keep in part of it. I think mostly just like the flash of like Doomsday and all that. Like, and have something that triggers it too. Like when Batman is like looking at all the kryptonite stuff, like maybe he touches a Kryptonian artifact and that made him get flashes of of stuff. Also, the idea of Lex Luthor communicating with Steppenwolf, that's a cool concept. You can leave that in there. Just again, these are all cool things that can be had in moderation. And in the aftermath of the fight, all of this comes to light and it's brought up with Superman. And Superman kind of realizes that, okay, with all the mix-up between me and Bizarro, maybe I need to go away for a while, and then it would make sense for me to go off-world and try and figure out what exactly is going on with the Doomsday signals and Steppenwolf and who is that and all this other stuff. So Superman will still be out of the picture for at least the beginning of Justice League, but not because he's dead, but because he's off-world looking for answers, and he's got Bizarro on the ship, and he's in this cryo-sleep type thing where he's trying to figure out how he can reverse all of Lex's experiments, which turned him into Bizarro, and if not, he'll just shoot him off in the Phantom Zone. From there, you give writers kind of options if they just want to get rid of Zod, or if, like, I don't know, you want to make him like a Loki character where he's kind of an anti-hero and we don't know if you can trust him or not. But I think it's important before we show Superman going away. I think two things are super important before we show Superman going away. One, get a legitimate, like, sentimental moment between these two. Like, Batman became the person he never wanted to be, and Superman brought him out of that. We see the pinnacle of Superman being a symbol of hope, and it gave Batman enough hope to be like, you know what, I'm gonna go back to doing things the way I used to do them. And then have a legit sentimental moment, and then immediately go into Batman being like, yeah, and if you ever cross that line that I crossed, I will take you down. And Superman going like, yeah, good, I hope you do. Have a little bit of banter back and forth between those two. Just have some fun with this movie, because there's a lot of dark stuff in this movie. Let's balance it out with some fun. And speaking of kind of sad, in my version of this movie, there'd be a bittersweet ending to Lois and Clark's, not their relationship, but their arc in this story. Clark doesn't die, so that's something. That's better than what we got in the theatrical version as far as, like, their relationship. But at the same time, he's gonna go away for a while, and he's been away for a while. There's just more strain on the relationship, and I don't know, just you see more of the cost of what Superman having to be everything to everyone does to this relationship. But at the same time, they love each other. Their bond has kind of been strengthened through these hard times. She's gonna wait for him, and she'll be ready to go when he gets back. And of course, Superman goes to Batman and is like, hey, I know you're a playboy. Don't even think about it. That's my girl. Don't even think about it. And then, after we have all of this set up, now, no point before that, but now, we bring out the flash drive with information on these other Justice League members and where we can find them. We don't do it, like, via email, like, right before the big fight of the movie. That just doesn't make any sense. Do it now. You don't have to do it as an end credits. You can do it before the credits roll, but now. Now is the appropriate time to say, okay, we finished this movie, now let's start looking at Justice League. And we will actually be hyped for Justice League because we will have a couple of established characters in this movie, a couple of established villains. We will have people and characters that we care about, and not just a bunch of big action set pieces. I know I said I wasn't going to make this video super long. Oh well, I guess I'm a liar. This video came out a lot longer than I thought it would be. I think basically what it comes down to with these two movies is just, there needs to be a bigger focus from a filmmaking perspective on what these characters are and not just what they look like or how they act. It doesn't matter how comic accurate these characters look and feel if they're used incorrectly. Gotta understand who Superman is, why Batman believes what he believes, why certain characters work in certain stories while they don't work in other situations. These are concepts that I think are important to grasp, not just for adapting things, but I think also for just filmmaking in general. That's how I would fix these two movies. I think going forward, just put the focus on character and how these characters interact, and not just in creating set pieces. Like, again, that line in Batman v Superman, that she with you? No, I thought she was with you. Like, that's a cool line. It doesn't make sense within the context of the movie. Showing the Justice League prior to the fight and showing that Batman and Wonder Woman were communicating beforehand was given precedence over that cool character moment. And you can't have both and have it work effectively. It's also sort of like that Suicide Squad thing where Harley comes out and she's like, oh, I should kill everyone and escape? Oh, sorry, the voices. No, I'm kidding. That's not what they really said. Like, that's so Harley Quinn. That's a cool moment. It's just that it's isolated. That line comes out of nowhere and then is just quickly ignored. You have to build movies around characters You can't just like have this big action set piece and then sprinkle in some characters. You gotta make sure people connect before you put them through the ringer. If I don't care about the people who are going through these painful, torturous things, then I'm basically watching a Saw movie. And I don't want to watch a Saw movie. I want to watch a good movie starring these characters that I love. And by the way, to anyone saying that Batman was basically Tony Stark in the new Justice League trailer, Batman has some funny moments. He can quip with the best of them. He's clever. I think Flash was really well done in that trailer. I'm nervous because they make good trailers. I just don't know if they're gonna make a good movie. So here's to hoping that Wonder Woman and Justice League come out really well. I don't think they'd be able to handle 4 straight not so good movies. At some point they gotta pick it up. There's too much money riding on this for them to keep screwing up. These are great characters. These could be great movies. Just put a bigger focus on characters. But anyway, thank you so much for sticking around through all of this and through my rambling. How would you guys fix those movies? What do you think needs to be done? Did I miss anything? Do you disagree with my interpretations of how to fix this? I want to hear your thoughts. Comment down below. Tell me all about it. What do you think went wrong? What do you think went right? What are your thoughts on these movies? What movie do you want to see me talk about how it could be fixed? Whatever thoughts you have, just go ahead and throw them down below. And also, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button because that matters in the YouTube algorithm now. So I hate telling people like, hey, like, comment, and subscribe, but like legitimately that's how channels grow, so I gotta say it. Sorry. But anyway, it's super late. I've got a work shift in like 5 hours. So until next time, God bless and stay saucy.